Hey, Off-Season After Dark fans, glad to have you back with us for episode 24. We have our third dive into the Big 12. So we're talking about Kansas State today, and I have Matt Girard with me. So many of you have heard me talk about my writings and articles with Mike Farrell Sports. Matt is our editor, so working with him outside of the show as well. So Matt, thanks for being here today. And tell us a little bit, about yourself. What got you into the college football space? Where our fans can find you? Things like that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here and chatting college football with you. Yeah, I'm a K-State alum, so I've been covering college football basically since my college days, working on the newspapers back in the day, and have just been a big college football fan ever since. Have had the opportunity to cover a lot of football in Texas, the state of Texas, whether it be college or high school. Getting to see a lot of big time football games over the years. So, that's how I keep in touch with it. And, with Mike Farrell, keeping my name in there, writing a few articles here and there and doing some editing. But, yeah, I'm just on Twitter as far as where you can find me, at MG at, sorry, excuse me.
I think I tagged it on the right here.
Okay, good.
0404. Yeah. And that'll be they'll also be able to see this here. I'll show the banner. Everybody can find that down there.
Okay,
so
cool.
They can find out where to find. And this will all be tagged.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure on that.
When you were doing stuff at K-State, both going there, doing media stuff for K-State, was that all in the Bill Snyder years, or did you also cover some of the Ron Prince years?
I actually was there. I was the editor-in-chief of the school newspaper, the Collegian, when Bill Snyder retired the first time.
Okay.
So
yeah,
my
in
whole
05, wasn't it?
Yeah, 05. And I was, but I was covering the end of the first Bill Snyder era, the Darren Sproles days, L. Roberson days. And then I had graduated, so I did not have a chance to experience the Ron Prince era so much. But and then when Snyder came back after that, it's been an interesting few years.
Yeah, I mean, it was when he retired, it was like, they were losing a legend. Then he came back, and I think we all kind of figured out it would be 2 years, maybe, get the ship straight righted, pass off to the next guy. He went for another decade after that, almost. So he did a good job. Or obviously, one of the legends of college football, and certainly the greatest coach, you guys have had at K-State. Very few coaches anywhere have meant more to the program than he did.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And all K-State fans will always, revert back to the miracle in Manhattan, which is what he did there.
Yes. I mean, that couldn't have said it better myself. So let's move on to the current guy. Chris Kleiman, obviously, heck of a coach, won over 50 games there. Me being a Minnesota native and coaching some guys who were fortunate enough to play at NDSU, a lot of exposure to him and know who he is. In his 5 years at NDSU, they won 4 national titles, and the other one they made the semis. Currently in his 7th year, I believe, at K-State, and probably the most disappointing year he's had, to be honest. He did have the 4-win year in year 2, but this year, going into the year, we kind of figured they would be in the mix for a conference title, and that just hasn't happened. We had Dylan Edwards got dinged up, and then, the way that unfolded, was kind of a fiasco. But what's went wrong for them this year, do you think?
It's really been some late game snafus, I guess you would say. And because in 3 of their 6 losses, they held a lead either going into the fourth quarter or at halftime. And those leads, they weren't insurmountable leads, but they were leads nonetheless late in the game. and the defense couldn't get anything going in those
Okay.
losses and stop anybody. And then the offense became very, just stagnant and
They did.
a lot of 3-and-outs and, and penalties. And it's really just in their losses, they have looked really, really bad this year.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And even go back to early in the season, you talked about the second quarter or second half, fourth quarter stuff. They could have lost that North Dakota game too, which was,
Absolutely.
obviously you don't want to lose your FCS game ever. That ended up being a 3-point win where they had to score with under 2 minutes left to get that W. But yeah, I mean that I remember, watched a few of their games this year. That Baylor loss was very close at Arizona early on. And then I don't think I've seen their last two, but watched that Texas Tech game, which wasn't as close, to be honest. But they're a heck of a team this year. How has Avery Johnson been this year for our viewers out there that may not have watched him as closely? He's had the most rushing touchdowns on the team at 8, throwing the 18 touchdowns, 6 picks, 2,200 yards for the people, into the stats there. But he was a big name coming into the season. How's he been this year?
Yeah, I mean, as he goes, as the Wildcats go, and unfortunately, he's not run as much this year is what has made him dynamic. What made him dynamic last year and why the hopes were so high at K-State was because of that rushing ability. Hopefully the throwing would come, along as he progresses in his career. But this year they have thrown the ball or attempted to throw the ball way more than anybody probably ever thought. And when they've had success, it's when Avery has ran the ball and been a part of the run game and designed runs. But there's also been the offensive line has not been great. Johnson has had to run for his life in almost every single down. But it's funny, they're a team that can come back on you pretty quickly, but they'll give up a lead pretty quick as well. So it's really it's one of the most inconsistent K-State teams I've ever seen. They've only won back-to-back games once this year, I think, and they just keep flip-flopping wins and losses. So it just seems like they just cannot get any momentum going once something good happens.
And Joe Jackson got put into a tough spot for a guy who, not that he's a decent running back, but we didn't expect him to have to be the bell cow with everything that happened with Edwards, and it's put him into a spot where we weren't expecting that. Johnson's running less, and the right side of that line with Vass and Line Gang just haven't been as great in the run game. They've been inconsistent up there. So just a tough spot, for them.
But yeah, Jackson, though, even with like what he did last week, that he broke the school record, broke Sproul's rushing yards in a game. I was at that game back in the day when Sproul's first set that record, and then I was watching on Saturday when Joe Jackson did it again. But yeah, he's been really a bright spot because nobody really knew who he was, but it was all about Dylan Edwards prior to the season, and he's been thrust into that position, and he's performed very well, I think, and showed he can put the team on his back when he needs to. But yeah, it's just been, like I said, it's been tough. It's been tough sledding all year.
And that inconsistency too has, made its way to the pass catchers, going in. Brown and Bradley, we thought would be decent receivers, and Oakley, very good tight end. Now, I know Brown is hurt. Is he out for the year, or is he potentially going to come back?
I have not heard. I haven't seen anything lately on Brown. I did see he was injured. But another guy who stepped up this year is Tibbs. Has been good to go along with Oakley. But yeah, they've had some some drops at times when it matters. And you can't have those, and that help. It doesn't help with Avery's not exactly accurate all the time, and
Yeah.
that can put your receivers in tough positions. But Tibbs has made some big catches on the year, along with Brown, obviously, who's the playmaker. But yeah, I think it's just been inconsistent play, and relying on guys making catches.
Yeah. And that inconsistency doesn't help in this case when you're, looking at their average depth of throw for the receivers, with Tibbs and Bradley, they're both over 12. That means you're throwing long balls on average to those guys. You're going to have more incompletions and potentially turnovers when that happens. So it's, very much feast or famine in that case. So, you know, obviously, big game this week. Hopefully you get a win against Colorado to become bowl eligible. I realize going into the year you didn't expect 6-6, and even if you get a win, would be somewhat of a letdown. But I think you'll win. Go to a bowl game. Who knows what can happen there? But moving into the off season, what do you expect to be some changes that Chris Kleiman might make? Whether it be coaching, guys he might go after in the portal. I don't know anything about the recruiting class they have coming in, but where does that roster, need to get improved?
Yeah, I think one main area is the offensive play calling, or an offensive coordinator. Matt Wells, his first year there did okay, but this year, there's a lot of questionable play calling. I think a lot of fans are like wondering what is going on, and it's been tough for the offense since Colin Klein left.
Yes.
And when he went to Texas A&M, and you have plenty of fans seeing what he's doing down there with Marcel Reed, and probably a lot of people think he could do the same with Avery Johnson.
They also have one of the 3 best O-lines in the country, so he has a lot of
that
help
always
there.
helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, I think there's going to be some changes on the offensive side of the ball. That the defense is. They've dealt with a lot of these and inconsistencies. Linebackers are good. They usually have really good secondary. I can't remember, or I don't have off the top of my head, who's all coming back and all that. But, there's some players there. I think
it looks like the safeties are seniors. The corners will be coming back. Yeah.
That in the corners. Yeah. That and probably coming there. Maybe a couple off of injury too next year, kind of thing. The defensive, the linebackers have played pretty well this year. I think Parnell. I think
Parnell is by far the leading tackler.
Yeah. He's a beast. Obviously, but and the defensive line has been pretty formidable. In games at least, they cause a lot of havoc in there. But
Jordan Allen is a good player. He's the one that has stood out to me in some of the games I've seen of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and losing Austin Romaine is tough. That guy was one of the heart and souls of that defense. But yeah, I mean, obviously on the offensive side of the ball, I think the tight end room is going to be solid. We got some young guys in there who are going to be good. Receivers, we're not that deep, it seems. Probably need to look there. Offensive line, obviously, need to get some help for Avery. Yeah. I think Avery can bounce back. Certainly, he's still got that speed. He still has, can rush the ball, can score on you very quickly, with those legs. And he's made some terrific passes. But I think we need to get somebody in there who can kind of balance that out, the rushing and developing him as a passer, and then the offense can soar as far as that goes. Whether or not, the head man, Chris Kleiman's back, I mean, his buyout's $30 million, and it's through 2030. Is it 2030 or 20? I can't, or you got a 7 or 8 year extension after the Big 12 championship year. So I was looking the other day. It would be if K-State did move on for some reason, that $30 million buyout would be one of the top 5 of all time buyouts.
I would be shocked if they moved on from him. I
Right.
don't think they should.
And I think you get you see that too on Twitter, after the game. It was very emotional, and the AD came up to him and gave him gave him a pat on the back and said, you're not going anywhere, which is from the human side of it is great to see, but I still think there's going to be people who want wins above anything else. And K-State,
and he's mostly giving you that up until this year. Like, it's just been a down year, I think.
And he has, he's over 600 winning percentage as a coach. I think the kids do play for him. I think it's it's interesting with the NIL and everything, because K-State is not a big money school by any means. It's one of the smallest in the Big 12 conference as far as the number of students that go there and everything. But it's tough. We are loyal fans. K-State fans are very loyal. We had Bill Snyder for all those years, so it's nothing.
Loyalty has its limits when you're not winning, though. We've seen that with some. But my counterpoint to that would be, this is the first year since the COVID year where he's not gotten at least 8 wins. So he's been good. Yeah.
He has. I do think a bowl, winning this weekend, beating Colorado, an old school Big 8 rival, I think would go a long way for the fan base. At least getting bowl eligible, that's the standard for K-State. That's that's what we did for all those years in a row, was getting to a bowl game. And it didn't matter what the record was at that point. It was just get to a bowl game, and we'll go from there. So I think. Getting to a bowl game, not only, the prestige of getting to a bowl game, but, that extra practice for the guys.
Absolutely.
And letting the young ones maybe get some reps for next year and that sort of thing. So that's very valuable just as the team moves forward. And I think that a win certainly would create a lot of momentum toward that. But, a loss in that game, It could be tough. It could get dark.
Missing out on a bowl game would be definitely a bad situation.
And losing to a team that's not good. I mean, frankly, Colorado's, that should be a win.
Struggling. They're struggling. And I think what you would mention, a team like K-State, who, NIL-wise, financially, they're not great. Like, it's not at the peak of, like a Texas Tech or, some of those other teams. That makes that bowl game all the more important, because you rely on that money to fund your athletic department for the whole year for all sports.
Right. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the Big 12. So, we have, we've talked about K-State, Colorado, struggling, but at the other end of it, we still have 3 teams who have legit playoff chances in Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, and I don't want to say Arizona State has a good chance, but there is technically, they still could make the conference title game, which by nature means you could go to the playoffs.
Yep.
So what in this conference, this year, who stood out to you? Those 3 teams at the top, what has put them there? What have they done well this year beyond Texas Tech, just rebuilding the roster?
Yeah. But I'll tell you, even though, you don't know how necessarily how all those new guys are going to gel and everything. And that team is just, I haven't seen them in person, but watching them pretty much every week, they are legit. And I'd be scared for all the other conferences having to play Tech in the playoff. But that being said, they're on top of the Big 12 for a reason. But BYU, their lone loss of the year is to Tech. Tech handled them, but they getting the rematch. I know they're hungry. That's a hungry team ready for a rematch with Tech. But you have Utah, who I hadn't seen much of until last week, until the K-State game. Was shocked at their defense. gave up as many yards as they did,
Mhm.
because usually that defense is very good right along. Texas Tech gets all the glory as far as the headlines of that, but Utah is a very stout defense, and their running game is just,
They are.
they're mauling people. And then playing in Salt Lake, that atmosphere is obviously a tough place to play. But yeah, like BYU, another tough place to play. Arizona State, a tough place to play. If for some reason, I feel like Arizona State, they're going to be in it till the end. They may not get there, obviously, without having Sam Leavitt as quarterback right now. It dings
Yeah,
them
you
a
just
little
don't
bit,
expect
but
Jeff Sims to be that guy.
no, but they're going to be a problem here toward the end of the season. That's for sure. Like they're going to be a scrappy team because of who their coach is. And
I'll talk about he's legit. Talked about him a lot last week on our Auburn show. So, and there's two teams I want to talk about who preseason wise we didn't think they would be nearly as good as they are. Cincinnati has had a heck of a season. Took the loss last week, to BYU. They've lost 3 in a row, but we didn't think they would be sitting at 7-4 like they are, and we didn't think Houston would be 8-3. Houston was one of my favorite win total, like over the win total, because I think they were projected to win 4.5 or 5.5, and they're already at 8. But Willie Fritz is a heck of a coach. I mean, there are not a lot of guys better than him. He's done well everywhere he's been. But let's go back to Cincinnati, with Sorsby. They're a team that, they were finding ways to win close games early on. Now, they weren't, outside of Iowa State, they weren't beating a lot of great teams, but they were still getting wins when they were playing teams that were equal or lesser than them. How did Cincinnati do with this year?
I think they just really they've played well. I mean, they've that defense is good. And Sorsby, you heard a little bit about him in the offseason. I remember at Big 12 Media Days, people were talking him up as a part of being, because this year was supposed to be a great quarterback class as far as the Big 12 went. Had like 9 returning starters or something like that, and he was, mentioned highly in those. And really, he's been good, and I think Cincinnati had the talent, but they were really hurt last year. I know, missing a lot of guys, and I think those guys came back this year and were healthy. So that talent kind of rose to the top a little bit. But I think I think now though you're seeing where the talent deficiency at Cincinnati compared to the rest of the like a Texas Tech or a BYU. Yeah. I think it's just it was kind of a matter of time, like you said. They were beating who they were supposed to, and now they're facing the tougher part of their schedule. Those games you never know. If you win them, they're huge. But
still an impressive year for them. I mean, going in, Satterfield was probably on the hottest seat of anybody in the conference, and now him or Willie's probably going to be conference coach of the year. So.
Yeah, and Willie, like you said, Connor Wegman, he's been outstanding as quarterback for them.
And he was. I remember preseason talking with one of my friends who's a writer about this. When he was at A&M, he was actually good when he was on the field. He just could never stay healthy. Now that he stayed mostly healthy, we're seeing him what he can do.
Yeah, and especially that guy he's one of the, honestly, every time I watch them, he's the dirtiest quarterback. His uniform is the dirtiest quarterback I've ever seen. He's always all over the field. He's really putting his heart and soul out there and gutting it out. But Willie Fritz, he's an impressive coach, and I can see why those guys play for him. Houston can have good teams, because if you can get some of those kids, them Houston kids, to stay home, you can have some talented teams come out of there.
And the number 1 recruit in the country at quarterback is committed to Houston. So I think Henderson is his last name, but he's a Houston kid.
Mm-hmm.
So Willie's clearly doing the right things there.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State, they're still an outside shot at the conference title game, but by their expectations at 8-3, you might almost say a disappointment in some ways, because I think everyone there, you expected to be back in the conference title game and probably going to the playoffs. That looks unlikely to happen at this point, but you're going to live and die by Levitt to some extent. And, he just has not stayed healthy this year. So, and who knows if we're going to see him play for the Sun Devils again. Hopefully this year we do, but I'm not holding my breath that he's with them next year based on what came out, in the last week. So,
yeah, which is, I'm surprised by that one. I thought he really liked that situation. It seemed like him and Dillingham really, communicated well, and it's an odd situation to me.
Yeah. And maybe they do. Maybe it's all about setting himself up financially. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, but he's a good quarterback. That's a fun team. Like I said, Dillingham's always going to have them playing tough. And coming off of even though it was an unexpected Big 12, championship, I think the standards were set there. And I think that's what Dillingham set for the year was, those are our expectations, and we're going to keep doing that. And I don't see why Arizona State isn't up there every year contending at this point, as long as he's the coach. Yeah,
and even if Levitt does leave, I trust him to target someone good in the portal who will be the next guy. Because if he leaves, I don't think their starter next year is currently on the roster. I think they go get somebody else.
Yeah, I would think so.
So we'll see what happens there. Can't been up and down year for Kansas. I thought last year was the blip. Kansas lost a lot of those close games. They're not much better this year. 5-6. They're playing for a bowl game. They're, obviously back on campus with the new stadium. They're a team, like we said with you guys, winning this last game is massive for them. I think if you're Lance Leopold, you need to go to a bowl game this year, and they'll be fighting tooth and nail to get that last win. Only their final opponent's a lot tougher in Utah, team who's playing for the playoffs. So going to be tough for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, it is going to be tough because that Utah team is pretty good. Yeah. Even if they are playing at KU, KU's been it's the Leopold, I think, is a good coach. I think the fans like him. I think there are some rumblings, they'd like to see more wins, of course, and wouldn't we all? But
they were so bad when he took over.
Yeah,
it's tough.
That. It's tough to come back from what had happened there.
It's the same thing with Colorado with Dion. Yeah, you're not good this year, but you're way, way better than when the guy took over.
Exactly. And Leopold, maybe he is the right guy. They did need a new stadium. I'd been in the old one a few times in my career, and I haven't been in the new one. I'd like to see it, but good for them. But he helped with that. I think he'll always have a special plate in the Jayhawk faithful heart for what he has done there. I'm sure it's tough for him to not be seeing the wins and increase and everything, but they can be pesky for sure. At times they've certainly proven that to other teams. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. They're going to be moving on from a quarterback they've had for a very long time. So it'll be interesting to see who emerges next.
Yeah, they're another one. I don't know if their QB next year is currently on the roster. It'll be because if you go with a young guy, you might have to hamper expectations and risk missing a bowl game again next year. But can he do that? Does he want to do that? Are you looking at 2-3 years down the road, or is it we got to get to a bowl game this year, which means you might have to go get a veteran who's played. And if you're in their situation, it's either probably a G5 starter or a Power 4 guy that lost a starting job. So
Yep. So you're kind of setting yourself back a little bit at that point. But
another Big 12 team. Someone asked me a few days ago. It was a random one. Who's a good team that nobody's talking about in the country? And I thought for a bit, I'm like, Oh, it's TCU. Nobody talks about TCU. They're actually a decent team. They've won 7 games. That was kind of the game that righted the ship for K-State when you guys beat them.
Mm-hmm.
But, with Hoover, McAllister, Jordan Dwyer, they're pretty, again, like the problems with K-State, they're inconsistent as can be. But at 7-4, they're a little more consistent. But that TCU team is pretty good. And it's like they're just off the radar for everybody. I don't know why, but
yeah, I remember
they're
at the
solid.
beginning of the year, I thought they might be a dark horse contender for the title or to be in the championship game at least, because Hoover, had a lot of hype coming out for this year, and but, their passing offense with a coach like Sonny Dykes, I'm not shocked. They have one of the top passing offenses in the nation, I think. And, and I think those TCU teams aren't going to be the old Gary Patterson beat you with defense type teams.
No, they're not.
A Sonny Dykes team, they're going to outscore you, and they're fun to watch. Their uniforms are interesting always. And that I know that stadium can get pretty raucous at times. It's a good home crowd for those guys, but yeah, they're just, I think under Sonny Dykes, he's always going to have them, he's always going to have them around, if not at the top, but around in the middle, and being pesky and being right there.
Yeah. And like you had said, preseason wise, you thought they might be a dark horse, for the conference title game. Really, they were in that mix up until a couple weeks ago, and with the 2 conference losses, you were in it. Then you lost to Iowa State. Then you got your ass kicked by BYU. Then you were out of it, despite getting a good win against Houston this past weekend, which then knocked Houston out. But yeah, it's that TCU team's good, but could be better, could be worse. Then when I've had my Big 12 episodes, I've always ended with this question. I suppose we should talk a bit about Baylor and Colorado first. Baylor said Dave Aranda is coming back. I think he was a guy who last year could have lost his job. Now this year at 5-6, I was surprised at that time, because for me, if you lose this weekend, in your last game against Houston and miss a bowl game, I don't know that I would have brought him back. They've said they are. So.
Yeah, it's tough. I've had the opportunity to watch Baylor a couple times this year, and that offense is fun to watch. The defense, they really fly around, and that's certainly the defense is Aranda's doing, but they've also had some mind-numbing collapses as well. They have the talent. It is when I went there when I was at the Baylor K-State game, I was shocked at how little of fan base there was for that game. Granted, it was an 11 a.m. Kickoff for us here in Texas, but that was a little shocking. I know that, and at that time they had lost a couple, and they came back and beat K-State that game, and things were looking good. And but yeah, Aranda coming back seems like it's a move I'm not sure about. He's a good coach. His defenses seem to play well most of the time. And like I said,
it's almost like I wonder if Baylor's mindset is we're okay with him, and we risk getting a lot worse if we fire him. That's a risk we don't want to take. Like they're okay with the just being where they're at to some extent.
Yeah. And to be fair, he's got a Big 12 championship under his belt too.
Does.
So,
yeah.
He's been to the top. It's if he can keep doing, if he can, right some of those things and get them playing a little, better. They're, like I said, it's a fun environment to watch a game, and I can see why fans, could get behind him, but it's kind of a weird season for him this year. But yeah, like you said, not getting a bowl game this year might, that seems like it's and already deciding on it seems a little real
Yeah,
quick.
for me, it's not keeping him or firing him. It's the timing of why do you do it at 5 and 6? That's the other thing I wonder with him is because of he's been at Wisconsin where they're struggling with Fickle. He was at LSU under an elite team, and with him, when he has a really good year, does he think every year it's a will they, won't they with me here? Does he jump the first good year he has? Maybe. It might happen.
Yep, it very well could.
So he'll be interesting. And then the Buffaloes at Colorado. They're 3-8. They just have the one conference win, surprisingly, against a ranked Iowa State team. I didn't watch that game, but was keeping up to the score of it. But we expected some regression with Colorado. You lost the Heisman Trophy winner with Hunter, Shador, and a number of other guys. I don't think we expected them to be this poor. I still expected they would be hovering around that 6 wins and make a bowl game. They would have been a team. I wouldn't have been shocked if they were 5 and 6 going into this weekend. But instead, you're 3-8. You got one game, then it's done. I don't know why, but I expect another big roster turnover with them this offseason. What's went wrong for Colorado beyond losing the 2 good players you had last year?
Yeah, I think it just seems that he kind of lost whatever was the mojo he had, after last year, and just couldn't turn when things went bad. They didn't have the answers. Apologize for my dogs right now.
No, and you wonder if his health is playing a role too. I mean, I can't imagine. It's cringy hearing how awful some of the health things he's going through. Like I prayers for him and hope Dion can recover from that because it sounds awful what he's going through.
Absolutely. And you hope the health is okay and holds up because I think he can still get, what his idea of what Colorado can be. I think it's possible. I think he can get the players there. It's just a matter of, you're going to go through some transition years, obviously, like as bad as they were, they did get good quick, but those players are gone. So he's got to, retool again. And
hopefully you can keep Julian Lewis and build around him for the future.
Right.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. And for them, neither of us have talked about their biggest problem over his whole time. The O-line is not good. You have the one elite recruit in Jordan Seaton at tackle who is hurt now, but the early grumblings are some of the blue bloods may target him in the portal this offseason for that bookend left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would bank on Colorado keeping him if that's the case, just based on finances and if he wants to win a national title, which he will have the elites of the elite recruiting him. Like, hey, he's one who is Alabama going to want him to replace Caden Proctor? Maybe. Mm-hmm. Is Georgia going to want him? Ohio State? Everybody will want the guy. Tough to fend all of them off if you're the Buffaloes.
Yeah. And then and then you have to think about replacing him too when they've already when the rest of the line's been that bad as it has for the past couple of years. But maybe Prime will look to bringing in his own new offensive line. Yeah.
And they replaced their O-line coach, Phil Odolt, former Viking, who's now at Mississippi State. So now I had misspoke earlier when I said I want to end on the 2 teams we always end on in the Big 12. Now we're back to there. The West Virginia, UCF, the 2 teams that brought back their former head coaches. And honestly, they're both about where I expected. We expected the year ones would be tougher, but we would see some signs of life and potential. I think we've seen that out of both of them. UCF is playing for a bowl game in this last week at 5 and 6. Now, I don't think they get it going to BYU. I think that's about the last place you'd want to play in this situation for UCF. But this season is obviously going to a bowl game would be massive for them. Anticipating that doesn't happen. I think the future still looks okay for UCF. You're 5 and 7 year one pending this game. I think you got to be feeling okay about moving forward with Scott Frost again.
Yeah, I think they're all in with Scott Frost. I think they know it's going to be maybe take him a little bit of time to reset. How well he had them when he left, but he certainly has gone through some tough seasons before. But I think he's got the leash because of what he did prior to. What he did prior, they're going to give him a leash, and you've got that Florida talent sitting right there, right in the middle of the state. So I think he'll be able to. Things are looking up for UCF,
and I think he's committed to him. I think he views this as they hired me when nobody else would. They took a chance on me again, and I think he feels some gratitude to them, rightly so. Now, West Virginia bringing Rich Rod back, though different circumstances, where he was coming off of a conference title with Jacksonville State. And then they had the misfortune early on, I forget if it was week 2 or 3, but in their FCS game against Ohio, your bell cow, Jaheim White, who you expected to be the best player on your team, he gets hurt for the season. Very few teams are going to make up for that. They're now 4-7. I expect them to be 4-8 after, that West Virginia ends with Texas Tech at home this week. But again, 4-8, considering White got hurt and your QB room, with Henderson and Nico Martial both hurt for the season, you're down to QB3 at best. I don't think those fans there are going to panic too much. I think they're okay. Year one, we couldn't anticipate all these injuries. We're also looking okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think again, like with Scott Frost, they know what the potential is with Rich Rodriguez. The second times around, they're not always the best.
No.
They can't all be Bill Snyder's. But that's it'll be interesting to see.
Arkansas is learning that too. Yeah,
I do think they'll give it some time for him to build something. But he is kind of. It's crazy to think that now he's kind of one of those coaches who's on the older side, and dealing with a different college football than when he had success the last time. So and some of those older coaches are it's showing that it's not going to work out.
He's 62. That's up there for that game.
Yeah, and the game has changed. Not the game itself. He's obviously a very offensive.
The way you run the roster has changed.
The way. Yeah, exactly. And I don't feel like he doesn't embrace that, but at the same time, I do think it's, there's new ways to doing things, in his previous way of how he did things may not work. I don't know. I don't have any, just the feeling of that. But as far as the coaching goes, he's a good coach.
Yeah. And one thing he's been successful at every stop, whether it be West Virginia the first time, Michigan, he wasn't as bad as a lot of people say, but this not there, but Michigan, Arizona, Jacksonville State. He's been very good at unearthing those under the radar recruits that are very good fits for his unique offense. West Virginia is a place you're going to need to do that, because geographically where they're at, you're close to Ohio State, you're close to Penn State, you're close to a lot of teams who are going to get those elite guys over you most of the time. Getting those next level down guys who are great fits for you are vital, and he's always been good at that. So hopefully for them, he could do that. One thing we talk a lot about coaches on the show, and we certainly have now, but I'm going to show our preseason list of the coaching rankings. I don't think there's a conference in the country where this list has changed more from the preseason than it does to today. We have our number 3 guy is fired. Our number 8 guy is going to drop a lot. Your guy Kleiman, probably going to drop a lot, though not a ton. And especially our last 2 guys, Satterfield and Brent Brennan, way higher on this list now than they would have been in the preseason. And Willie also at 13, a lot higher, though I would have had Willie way higher than this list because of his track record everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
that list is gonna certainly from the preseason is certainly different because Joey McGuire, Kyle Whittingham's gonna be up there, Sataki's gonna be up there,
yeah.
Dillingham, I mean it's and like I said, Brennan and Satterfield have done good jobs, and Fritz,
McGuire's going to be higher, a lot higher.
a lot higher there for sure. But I think it's great to see obviously depending on what Oklahoma State does. I still think, you don't see a lot of coaches going anywhere for the Big 12. So I think that's good for the conference, a little bit of, continuity with the same guys who are there.
Yeah.
And whoever they bring in at Oklahoma State, I think is going to be a big, a name that's going to fit right into that collection right there.
Let's talk about that a bit. Who are some of the guys you think could be at Oklahoma State as the next guy? The ones I think Eric Morris could be a guy at North Texas, and then I've heard Alex Golish's name a few places, but we're hearing both of those two for multiple jobs. But to me, Morris would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that certainly would. He's a hot coach right now, a hot name. Yeah. His offense he's an offensive coach. That Oklahoma State was always known for offense under Gundy and in the good years. So that certainly would be a fit. I have seen Colin Klein's name, tied to them a little bit.
Another one I saw was Ryan Silverfield at Memphis, who's been successful there.
Yeah. And then you have Zach Robinson, the Falcons OC.
Yeah. Former QB there.
Former QB there, which would fit in nicely with their narrative of hiring former quarterbacks to be their coaches.
Is he just the extension of the era you're trying to get away from?
It might be redundant having him back. But yeah, I think I do think it's a fairly attractive job for guys. Yeah. But I don't think, it's obviously going to be overshadowed by your LSUs and Floridas and that sort of thing. But I think, Oklahoma State does have NIL capabilities.
They do.
They have that backing. The fan base is usually, they had Gundy for forever. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I personally hope I don't see Colin Klein, in orange and black myself. But, like I said, Eric Morris, seems like a kind of a perfect fit for them.
I agree. I think he would make a lot of sense there. Another one I've heard lately is Jason Eck, New Mexico, who was good at Idaho, went to New Mexico. I think they've won 8 games now. He's had a heck of a year there. He's only been there 1 year. I wonder if that would lessen his chances of leaving. Sometimes guys don't want to bolt after just one season. Mm-hmm. But he's another one who, heck of a coach. We'll see what happens. But I think I agree with you. Attractive job in a lot of ways. It's a place they're at the bottom now, but they've been competitive for a lot of years in that conference, and I think could be back to being competitive. We saw how quick Arizona State went from the bottom to competitive. Colorado also did that. You can do it.
Yeah, and Arizona this year, a lot of people didn't think they were going to be terribly good this year, but they've certainly, Houston probably wasn't picked very high, but it happened every year in the Big 12. We get a couple that, come up from the bottom.
Yeah. So going back to this list a little, if I was going to put you on the hot seat now, tell you right now, today, if you were ranking your top 3, what order would you go?
I would have to go
at 1. Well, who would you have at 1?
I would have Joey McGuire at 1.
Okay. I think I would have Whittingham at 1. I think I would agree with this.
Whittingham
partly based on his career, and he's been so consistent over time.
Sure. Joey McGuire is a Texas guy. He did all his coaching in Texas. I think he's really put in the time, I think. And I'm glad to see the success he's had. But yeah, I'd probably go McGuire, Whittingham, and then I'd probably go. Probably Sataki would be my Those
Okay.
would be my top three.
And I think I would have the same three, but I think I'd go Winningham, Sataki, McGuire. But McGuire Dillingham is tough. Like, it's tough to leave Kenny Dillingham out of that conversation.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
And he hasn't been as good as these guys, but if I was starting a team from scratch, I'd probably pick Willie Fritz to start it from scratch based on what he's done at multiple places.
Yeah, it's kind of what he does.
Yeah. Two questions I always ask all of my guests every episode. Right now, with Gundy already fired, we have some clarity here. Which coach is on the hottest seat right now in the Big 12? You can take this from today if you want to, or going into next season if you want to.
Man, I think the hottest.
I think going into next year has to be Dave Aranda. We know he's going to be here next year, but
I would say
him going into next year.
I would say I was trying to decide between him and Leopold. I do think he'll be. I think he'll be a bit on the hot seat. Yeah. Campbell might be getting a little bit warm. I'm not saying hot, but if they don't do well, it could start to get heat up a little bit.
With us knowing Dave Aranda's coming back, I don't think anybody gets fired on this list between now and the start of next season. Like, I think they're all safe. So I almost look at it as a going into next year and I would say Aranda.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick. And like you said, there's only going to really probably be one new coach come in unless somebody takes a job somewhere else. But
so
I think you're going to have the same guys.
That's my next question that I always ask. Which coach on this list is the most likely to get a better job or a blue blood job and step up? And I think there's multiple on this list that could.
Yeah, there certainly are. I think Matt Campbell is a candidate of that. I would say Kenny Dillingham. I don't see him leaving Arizona State, but it certainly is somebody who would talk about or people would want to talk about.
And I don't see Sataki leaving because, he's an alumni. He has a great thing going. He's been there for a while. And there's also his tie-ins with, the LDS church. But, like I told you off camera, say Jed Fish leaves Washington. If I'm the Huskies, he's one of my first calls. So he would be a great fit there. But again, I don't think Gundy leaves. The same reason you said with Dillingham.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's and Joe McGuire. I don't see him going anywhere. No matter what happens here in the playoff.
Why would you leave the situation you're in with the NIL backing you have?
Yeah, he's got it. He's got it set up just the way he needs it.
Yeah, and I think there would be a realistic shot. Campbell, Sataki, Dillingham, all of them potentially could. And if Dion had a big year, he could. I also think for the certain Midwest Big Ten job, Kleiman is a guy who with a good season could.
He certainly could. But
we'll see.
He certainly could. See, depending on what happens.
No, I doubt it happens this year, obviously.
No. He'll be there for at least through this year for sure.
Yeah. Now moving into our final segment, talking about the playoffs. What Big 12 teams, do you think BYU and Texas Tech play again for the conference title? I think that's the way to lead this one off.
Yeah, I do think we'll see the rematch on December 6th with Tech and BYU.
And if both of them win, that is, what will happen. Do you think we have the same outcome where Texas Tech wins?
I do. I think Tech will get him again. Again, it's that defense of theirs.
It is.
And what they did prior at. Oh no, that was at Tech, so that was at home. But there'll be a huge contingent.
Yeah, it was in Lubbock. Fans. It was in Lubbock the first time. Yeah.
There'll be plenty of Red Raiders in Dallas for that game. I would think Tech gets BYU again in that one.
So then Tech's in the playoffs. We know that. BYU at what would be 11-2 with both of your losses to Tech, one in the conference title. Do you think they get an at-large spot in the playoffs?
I think that they should.
I agree.
I don't think what the group of five has done these past couple of weeks have kind of shaken things up. I know you got to have a group of 5 team in there,
You
but
got to have one. Yeah.
I certainly don't think the ACC should get 2 in at this
They
point.
they won't this year. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm, I think the Big 12, just from a conference standpoint, you take the 2 best teams from one of the toughest conferences. People don't talk about how much of a gauntlet the Big 12 is, because they just feast on each other during the season. That I think the Big 12 is certainly worthy of 2 teams, and having those Texas Tech and BYU should be in the playoff, I think.
Yeah. Now, assuming Utah beats Kansas and goes to 10-2, I don't know if I would pick them to be a playoff team. They might be one of the 10-2 teams that's on the outside looking in, but there's still a chance they make it. They would need help. But what do you think, about Utah making it? What?
Yeah, Utah, they should handle their business against KU. They certainly have a case to be there on the outside, just on the outside, I think. Depending on what chaos could happen, they could certainly, I think they'd be one of the first Big 12 teams of outside of Tech and BYU. Obviously, I think they would have a pretty good shot at getting in if there's some chaos a little bit this week.
Yeah, you probably need Bama to lose the Iron Bowl. Oklahoma losing to LSU certainly helps them a lot. You need Vandy to lose to Tennessee. So most of those losses, I think, could happen. Notre Dame's not going to lose to Stanford. I don't think that's one where we need to. And I don't know if Miami could jump over Utah. Right now, Utah's 1 spot ahead of them. That seems unlikely to me, but who knows? There are pathways where Miami could make the conference title game, but there's 6 different teams that could make the conference title in the ACC. So
we could have Duke as an automatic bid in there, which would
but right now, exactly. Yeah, we could have a team that lost 3 non-con games, and a 7 or what would be 8-5 if they would win the conference title game. Yeah, be in the playoffs. So that'd be wild.
That would be wild.
I do know Virginia and SMU are the 2 ACC teams that control their destiny. If Virginia and SMU win, they will play for the conference title game. Pitt plays Miami. Both of those teams are currently in the running. So we'll see what happens. Duke obviously has a chance, and for the life of me, I'm blanking because there's so many teams out there. I'm blanking on who the last team. Oh, it's Georgia Tech, who, after losing last week, they took a bad loss to Pittsburgh. So But so at the end of the day, how many Big 12 teams do you think make the playoffs?
At the end of the day, 2.
I tend to agree with you there. I think it's going to be Texas Tech and BYU, and neither of them is a team I would want to play. Tech can beat anybody. I straight Ohio State is going to be tough to beat for anyone, but I think Tech can give anybody a game. BYU on their day, that D can be really salty, and they can pull you out in the deep water. I don't think BYU's a title contender. I don't expect that they could win 4 games in a row against good teams. I do think they could beat anybody, and win 1 or 2 though.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
I
could see BYU getting a win in the tournament.
But
getting further than that, that'd be kind of tough. But they can grind you down, that's for sure.
They can. But if BYU would end up playing Ole Miss, Oregon, Oklahoma, maybe Texas Tech again, they could beat any of those teams in a one-off. I don't expect them to win 4. Where Tech could be a semifinal team, I think.
Yep.
And when you're in the Final 4, anyone can win 2, I think.
Yeah.
So, But, Matt, thank you for being here. We've reached our conclusion. Again, everybody, you're seeing Matt's Twitter handle, and I'll tag that in the repost of this video. So, go check him out, on his stuff, with Mike Farrell with me, and also by extension, my work is to some extent Matt's work because he's editing most of them as well. So it was great to have you here. Good to talk about Kansas State, and thanks everybody for watching.